So I thought I'd put a little plug in for the website. I don't know how many people here have been reading it a little bit or semi-regularly. Cool, so that's good. I mean, we really want to keep developing it. We're still looking for more contributors. We can put music up there, video, art, articles, and hopefully it can become like a real information resource for people and really, kind of get us thinking in different ways. How's everybody's hedge fund doing today? So this story, it's like one of the most, I guess, proudest and most humiliating and embarrassing experiences of my whole life simultaneously was this story. So I was at Burning Man, I guess it was 2005, and so basically sometimes one takes a lot of strong doses of certain shamanic medicines at Burning Man and gets very far out and into interesting psychological states. Kind of like the Pepsi challenge, but just with different types of uncaffeinated substances. So I have a friend who's an incredibly good magnet for one of these particular substances, and somehow he, found a very good source and, very challenging dose of a substance. And it happened to be Friday, late afternoon, 2005, and the Friday I had some friends. When you're in Burning Man, you don't really hear anything about the outside world. There's no news, there's no media, you're just in the nonstop wow of now, the unfolding wow of now of Burning Man. But I had some friends who just managed to come on Friday. They couldn't get away all week. And I was hanging out with them, my camp, and they were kind of like in a strange mood. Like they'd just driven over there, and they were like, kind of into being there, but they were kind of like talking about what was happening in the United States of America. And it was, kind of surprising, because basically what they were kind of saying was that the whole fucking country was going crazy and falling apart. And that basically, I remember it as I was going towards Burning Man, there was like on CNN in the background at airports, this sense of like, ominous storm clouds gathering near New Orleans, and, something seemed to be brewing. But apparently there'd been this massive, thing had happened, and the whole city had been flooded. And as they explained it to me in this slightly perplexed, slightly jovial way, the whole city had melted down, and tens of thousands of people had been taken to the Superdome, where they weren't being given food or water, and helicopters were shooting at people. They tried to call in the National Guard, but the National Guard didn't seem to exist because they were in Iraq fighting a stupid war. So basically, the whole thing seemed to be, erupting into riots. And at that point, what they were saying was that these riots were beginning to spread out of New Orleans and through other towns in the South, along with kind of bands of starving people kind of moving along bridges and roads there. So I kind of like took this in as this like very challenging dose of medicine began to take full effect. And we went for a bike ride around Burning Man, and it was Friday night, so everything was in full effect, and things were burning, and lasers were flashing, and people were dancing and in costumes. And I think we went to the giant mousetrap, which was a huge version of the mousetrap game on a gigantic scale. And I guess they were trying to set up the enormous ball, which like rolls around and does all these things before it finally gets caught in the trap. I don't totally remember. Because basically what happened at that point is I started to go into a very kind of like unusual psychic space where I began to feel this kind of alienation from humanity, basically, kind of like this kind of, Paul was talking about deconditioning. This was kind of like a whole nother level of deconditioning, to the point where like, I doubt if you'd asked me what my name is, I doubt I would have really been able to give you an answer. And certainly the concept of entertainment like didn't really seem to exist anymore. And it was really more like this total kind of existential zero point, where I was kind of looking around all these people like doing this stuff, and I was really wondering, what is all this stuff? Like, what is this display? Like, why? And we went to El Circo, there was trapeze artists, dancers, dancing. Why everybody so excited? What's the deal is it with this? So we went back to my friend's trailer, and they produced some plastic-wrapped food and, salami and cheese, and we were eating it, and I was kind of like, began to come back a little bit, and I don't know, this basically, I guess what happened is an incredible amount of fury began to come into me. And I began to really think about like, what's that? Away from the mouth, better? Okay, cool. So yeah, so I began to really think about Just basically that I fucking hate the government. I fucking hate the government. And I don't think that we should be dominated by these fucking guys anymore. Just don't think it should happen anymore. And so I left my friends, they were home for the night, you know, and I sort of went out back into the desert. And I just began to get more and more, you know, cranky. And I stopped for a while, kind of threw my bike down in the dust, and really just thought about, like, you know, what the fuck are we doing on this planet right now? You know, where the biosphere is dying on us. We're looking at a situation where 25% of all species are going to be dead in, you know, the next 30 years, extinct. Climate change is accelerating, polar ice caps are melting. You know, do we have time for partying? Do we have time for festivals and flirtations and all this stuff? When are we going to get to work? So, you know, I found myself drifting over to the Center Camp Cafe, and there was a huge crowd of groovy San Francisco performers on stage, playing the drums, dancing, singing, woohoo! So I decided that I would stop all of that. So I went up on stage, and there was a guy who was kind of like a pillar of the kind of San Francisco hipster scene, who was drumming away, and I just took the drums out of his hand, the drumsticks, and I said, look, you've done this long enough, you've been doing this for years, you know, it's time to do something else, you know. You know what it's time to do? It's time to start the Underdog world revolution.